1942. Recruiting Office, Texas. The Marine Corps recruiter looked at the boy standing in front of him and laughed. "Son," the recruiter said, "you weigh 110 pounds. Your rifle weighs 10 pounds. If you march for a mile, you'll collapse." The boy was Audie Murphy. He was 17, but he looked 12. He was short, frail, and had the face of a choir boy. The Marines rejected him. The Navy rejected him. The paratroopers rejected him. They all said the same thing. "Go home, kid. War is for men." Only the Army infantry took him. They figured they could use him as a runner or a cook. They thought he was cannon fodder. They were wrong. 3 years later, that kid was the deadliest soldier in the European theater. He didn't just survive, he evolved. By January 1945, Audie Murphy was a lieutenant, but his company was gone. Out of 235 men who started, only 19 were left standing. They were dug into the frozen mud near the village of Holtzwihr, France. The temperature was 0, the ground was hard as iron, and facing them was the entire German 2nd Mountain Division and the Jag Panther tank destroyers. January 26, 1945, 1400 hours. The Germans attacked. It wasn't a probe, it was a hammer blow. 6 massive German tanks, Tiger and Jag Panther models, emerged from the woods, painted white to match the snow. Behind them marched 250 elite German infantrymen. Murphy had 19 men, no artillery support, no air support. His only heavy weapons were 2 M10 tank destroyers attached to his unit. But the M10s were useless on the ice. They tried to maneuver, but they slid into a ditch. A German 88mm shell hit the lead M10. Crash! The shell penetrated the thin armor. It killed the crew instantly. The M10 caught fire. But it wasn't just burning. It was fully loaded with gasoline and artillery shells. It was a ticking bomb waiting to vaporize everything within 50 yards. The surviving American troops panicked. "Pull back," the sergeants yelled. "We're overrun." The 19 men of Murphy's company retreated into the woods. Murphy didn't go with them. He stood alone on the edge of the forest. He looked at the 250 Germans advancing across the field. He looked at the burning M10. He picked up his field telephone. "This is Murphy," he told HQ. "I'm holding the line." The decision. The Germans were confident. They saw the Americans running. They saw the burning tank. They thought the flank was open. They didn't see the kid. Murphy realized his carbine was useless against this wave. He needed a machine gun. He looked at the burning M10. Mounted on the turret, engulfed in flames and smoke, was a 50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun. The tank was about to explode. The heat was melting the paint. Murphy ran toward it. He climbed up the burning hull. His boots slipped on the oil and ice. He dragged himself onto the turret, inches from the fire. The metal was searing hot. He grabbed the handles of the 50 cal. He checked the belt. It was full. The German infantry was 100 yards away. They were laughing, relaxed. Murphy racked the bolt. He wasn't fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for pure, cold hatred. The Germans heard the heavy, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the 50 cal. At first, they couldn't tell where it was coming from. Who would be stupid enough to stay on a burning tank? Then the front row of the German infantry simply disintegrated. The 50 caliber bullet is the size of a thumb. It tears through winter coats, helmets, and bodies. Murphy swept the field. He didn't fire in bursts. He held the trigger down. He was a one-man army. The German advance stopped. They dove into the snow. "Sniper!" a German officer shouted. "Find him!" They looked at the tree line. They fired into the woods. They didn't look at the burning tank, because logic dictated that no human could be alive in that fire. Murphy used the smoke as cover. He was a ghost in the inferno, and he was just getting started. For 10 minutes, the Germans were confused. Then, a tank commander spotted the muzzle flash on top of the burning M10. He shouted into his radio. The element of surprise was gone. Suddenly, every German weapon on the field turned toward Murphy. Bullets sparked off the turret like fireflies. The metal hull rang like a church bell being hit by a sledgehammer. A German Tiger tank rotated its massive 88mm main gun. It fired. Boom! The shell missed the turret by inches, exploding a tree behind Murphy. The shockwave nearly blew him off the tank. Murphy didn't duck. He didn't flinch. He swung the .50 caliber barrel toward the German infantry, trying to use the ditch for cover. He was exposed, silhouetted by the flames beneath him. He was the easiest target in France, but somehow the bullets missed him. It was as if the fire itself was protecting him.
Murphy wasn't just shooting, he was commanding. In his left hand, he gripped the field telephone connected to the battalion HQ miles away. "Artillery!" Murphy yelled into the mic. "Drop it on the grid coordinates!" The voice on the other end hesitated. "Lieutenant, those coordinates, that's your position. That's danger close." "I know where the Germans are," Murphy shouted back. "Just drop the rounds." Seconds later, American artillery shells began to whistle down. Crump, crump, crump. The explosions walked across the field, churning up the snow and mud. They landed just 50 yards from Murphy's tank. The shrapnel cut down the German infantry advancing on his flanks. Murphy was directing an orchestra of destruction while standing on a podium of fire. "How close are they?" the operator asked over the phone. Murphy looked at a German squad creeping through the smoke, just 50 feet away. "Hold the line," Murphy said calmly. "I'll let you talk to them." He dropped the phone and unleashed a burst of .50 caliber fire that sawed the German squad in half.
The luck couldn't last forever. A German sniper bullet found its mark. It slammed into Murphy's leg. The impact spun him around. Blood soaked his trousers instantly. The pain was blinding, like a hot poker driven into the muscle. He collapsed onto the hot metal of the turret. For a moment, the gun went silent. The Germans cheered. They thought he was dead. They stood up to charge. But then a hand reached up. Murphy dragged himself back to the gun. He couldn't stand, so he fired from one knee, bracing himself against the burning hatch. He was bleeding out. He was dizzy from the fumes of the burning gasoline, but his finger locked onto the trigger. The .50 cal roared back to life. The cheering Germans were cut down mid-stride. Murphy was fueled by pure adrenaline. He later said he didn't feel brave, he felt angry that they were trying to kill his friends. The fire inside the M10 was getting worse. The gasoline tank was boiling. The ammunition stored inside the hull began to cook off. Pop, pop, bang. Small explosions rocked the vehicle under Murphy's feet. He was standing on a bomb that was seconds away from detonation. His uniform was singed. His eyebrows were burned off. The heat was unbearable. But he looked at the woods. The Germans were wavering. They couldn't understand what they were fighting. They had hit him with everything, and he was still shooting. Fear began to spread in the Nazi ranks. They started to pull back. Murphy fired his last belt of ammunition. "That's it," he whispered. He dropped the empty belt. The gun clicked dry. He grabbed his telephone. "I'm coming in." He limped to the edge of the burning tank and jumped into the snow just as the fire reached the main magazine.
Seconds after Murphy hit the snow, the M10 tank destroyer finally detonated. Kaboom! The turret was blown 50 feet into the air. The concussion wave knocked the advancing German infantry flat on their backs. Murphy lay in the snow,
deafened, bleeding, and exhausted. But he didn't stay down. He grabbed his M1 carbine. He stood up on his good leg. He limped back to the tree line where his terrified men were hiding. They looked at him like he was a ghost. They thought he was dead 10 times over. Murphy didn't ask for a medic. He shouted one word: "Charge!" Inspired by the kid, the 19 survivors screamed and ran forward. The Germans, demoralized by the tank explosion and the insane resistance of one man, broke ranks. They retreated. The Americans retook the woods. The line held.
June 2, 1945. Salzburg, Austria. The war was over. Audie Murphy stood on a parade ground. He was 19 years old. General Alexander Patch placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. It was the highest award for valor, but it wasn't the only one. Murphy received the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. He was the most decorated soldier of World War II. The Army wanted to promote him to West Point. The public wanted to hug him. Life magazine put him on the cover. He became a symbol of American victory. He looked like a child playing dress-up in a uniform covered in metal, but his eyes were dead.
Murphy returned to Texas, but he couldn't go back to normal. James Cagney, the famous actor, invited him to Hollywood. Murphy became a movie star. He played himself in the movie To Hell and Back. He was rich, he was famous, he was handsome. But at night, the kid disappeared and the soldier returned. He suffered from severe PTSD, battle fatigue. He kept a loaded German Luger pistol under his pillow every single night. He had nightmares where he was back on the burning tank. He woke up screaming, reaching for the gun. He slept with the lights on. He gambled away his fortune. He gave away his medals to children, saying, "They are just metal. They don't bring my friends back." Audie Murphy died in a plane crash in 1971. He was 45 years old. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. His grave is the second most visited, after President Kennedy. But unlike other heroes, his headstone doesn't list his medals. It doesn't list his movies. It just lists his name and his rank. Because in the end, he wasn't a movie star or a monster. He was just a soldier who did his job when everyone else ran. He proved that size doesn't matter. Heart matters. And sometimes the smallest dog in the fight has the biggest bite. If you honor the legend of Audie Murphy, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of the greatest generation.